As a little girl, I always knew my father was different. He walked with a limp, and he wasn't able to run with us or ride a bike. And although he never talked about it, he was in constant pain. His legs and arms were riddled with long scars from numerous surgeries. During his early childhood, he enjoyed running, bicycling, and even climbing trees. But this was before his legs were fused at the age of 10 years old from damaged joints. Many of you have never even heard of hemophilia. Just one of you might have an acquaintance or a friend or even a family member who has it. But it's important to know what hemophilia is because 20,000 people in the United States, 500,000 worldwide suffer from it. Also, this speech might help inform you in case you need to help someone with hemophilia one day. Hemophilia runs in my family. My father, 2 of my cousins, and 2 of my sons, and I have inherited it. I treated hemophilia daily for the last 6 years, giving intravenous infusions. It was once a very deadly disease, but due to advance in modern medicine, it has become increasingly manageable. Today I will be discussing what hemophilia is. Second, I will be discussing the history of hemophilia, and finally I will be discussing the treatments of hemophilia. Now that I've given you an overview, let's start with what hemophilia is. It is a rare genetic bleeding disorder that affects mostly males and some women. Severity ranges from mild to severe. It is caused by the lack of clotting protein factor in the blood, which results in long bleeding times. Here you can see a normal vein where it clots, and here is a vein of a hemophiliac bleeding. My father and sons are severe, which means they have less than 1% of the factor VIII in their blood needed to form a clot. Complications include spontaneous internal bleeding in the muscles, joints, and even the brain. This bleeding can occur at any time for any reason. There are many types of hemophilia, but the most common are hemophilia A, which is the lack of factor VIII, and hemophilia B, which is the lack of factor IX. According to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, hemophilia occurs in approximately 1 in every 5,000 live births, some occurring by spontaneous mutation. Now that I've discussed what hemophilia is, I'll be discussing the history of hemophilia. According to hemophilia.org, uncontrollable bleeding can be dated back to biblical times. But it wasn't until 1803 that the term hemorrhaphilia was used and later shortened to hemophilia. It was also in 1803 that a man named John Conrad Otto, a Philadelphian physician, wrote a paper that was published acknowledging families who were affected by a hereditary bleeding disorder. The most infamous cases of hemophilia occurred in the 19th and 20th centuries among royal families in several countries including England and Russia, coining the phrase the royal disease. In the 20th century, life expectancy of someone with hemophilia was just 13 years old. Now that we've discussed about the history of hemophilia, I'll be discussing the treatments of hemophilia. Treatment of hemophilia has come a long way. In the 19th century and early 20th centuries, treatments consisted of snake venom and emergency blood transfusions used from family members. In 1926, physicians discovered that patients with hemophilia responded positively to receiving plasma during a joint or muscle bleed. But these methods took a long time, and patients still endured major damage to joints and other areas of the body. In 1970, something big happened. Powder concentrates of factor VIII and IX were developed, which made it possible for patients to keep and store medicine at home and infuse whenever they needed. Although the excitement of advancing treatments were shattered in 1980. The life-saving medication that the patients had been using was tainted by HIV and hepatitis C. This left more than half of all hemophiliacs in the United States affected with both diseases, including my father. Over the next 20 years, additional precautions began, such as testing for blood-borne diseases before donation, making medication manufactured from blood safer. Today, treatment of hemophilia is fully synthetic, free from all human blood and longer lasting than ever before. Administering factor just 2 or 3 times a week has led to an almost normal life among hemophiliacs. This is the medication that my sons and hemophiliacs give whenever they have a bleed, or 2 or 3 times a week. Today I've discussed what hemophilia is. Second, I discussed the history of hemophilia. And finally, I discussed the treatments of hemophilia. Hemophilia was once a very deadly disease, but due to advances in modern medicine, it has become increasingly manageable. In conclusion, Christopher Reeves once said, "A hero is an ordinary individual who finds strength in spite of overwhelming obstacles." Hemophilia hasn't defined my family, it has only made us stronger. And like those of the people of our hemophilia community like to say, anything you can do, we can do bleeding.